Hey, this is a Completing Work webinar by Positive Partnerships, and I thank you for joining us. This is a recording, so there's no other participants on the line. What I'm going to do throughout the webinar is I'm going to pause when there's a question to allow you time to think about the question. If you have some paper and pen handy, you may want to record your answers. Okay, so my name's Suzanne Donnelly and I'm going to be facilitating today's webinar. I'm from the New South Wales Positive Partnership team and my role is as a National Project Officer. I come from an education background and have been teaching at a school for children with autism. So before we start, I just want you to think about what's your intention today? Why did you want to listen to this webinar? And what do you want to get from the webinar? My intention today is to help you understand the characteristics of autism and how this impacts on your child's ability to complete work at home and at school. We will also discuss strategies that may support your child in this area. At the end of this webinar, we would hope that you will have some strategies to try and also some strategies that you can discuss with your school that may support your child. If you walk away with at least one new idea today, then we have achieved what we have set out to do. So we're going to begin by just looking at what are the characteristics of ASD that can make completing work a challenge. So organisation, a lot of people with autism have difficulties with their executive functioning, and this is a part of the brain that helps you be organised and plan, sequence things, and this is why a lot of people with autism can find completing work quite challenging. So organisation and where to start, where to end a task, what's needed can be difficult. Memory, so remembering what the instructions are, what order to complete things. Flexibility, moving from one thing to another, stopping things midway. Planning, that goes back to that executive functioning and planning and sequencing a task. Emotional control, what to do if feeling a bit anxious or a bit stressed. Time management, time can be very abstract, so knowing how long they have to complete a task. Attention, focusing not just on a little detail but on the bigger picture. Okay, so we're going to look into each one of those characteristics in a bit more detail. So first we're going to look at time management. And on the screen you can see that there's 3 examples under time management. So difficulty estimating the amount of time it takes to do something, difficulty completing set tasks, slow getting ready to get to class or begin homework or other tasks. Give you a minute now to think of what other challenges your child or child you might support have in the area of time management. So some strategies for time management is the timer. You use a timer to show how long to do a complete task, how long to do sections of a task, and timers can range from timers that count down to egg timers, timers on interactive whiteboards or phones. Some parents use songs if children get a little bit anxious around timers, so by the end of the song to have completed a task. Reinforcing, anything we reinforce we get more of, so reinforcement is always very important, so for finishing bits of tasks on time. And the use of checklists and visual schedules like the one that's come up. So do you have any suggestions that work for you at home? Take some time to think about what strategies you're using at home or what strategies you may be aware that school is using, and you can jot these down if you have some paper. So the next characteristic is flexibility. So children with autism can have difficulty seeing different ways of doing things. They like their routine and can be resistant if these change, especially from a preferred activity to a non-preferred activity. Can have difficulty with open-ended tasks, things that don't have that kind of structure or routine to them. Can you think of any others that your child might display in this area? Okay, so we're going to look at some strategies that can help with flexibility. You can give an example of a completed task or model how to complete a task. That can be very useful. You may do something like have a completed work sample or video modelling with the use of iPhones and iPads now to have a model that children can refer back to of how a task is to be completed can be very useful. A first this, then that chart, which is what's on the screen, can be very useful, especially moving from a non-preferred activity to a preferred activity or a preferred activity to a non-preferred activity. And the use of templates for showing how to complete a task or what steps are needed to complete the task. I just want to take a moment to think about if you have any other suggestions that work for you at home, or if you're aware of any strategies that the school uses. Another characteristic of autism that can make completing work difficult is planning. So trouble planning for big assignments, knowing what to do first and then what to do. Difficulty prioritising, especially if multiple instructions are given or they have multiple tasks or homework things to complete at one time. Can become quite overwhelmed and can lead to some anxiety. With planning, we think about what equipment's needed, what instructions have been given, where to start, how to complete the task, when are you finished, what do you do next. So things like that all need to be answered for a child that has autism. Some strategies that can help. Flowcharts or mind maps to show, especially with working out or for more complicated tasks, to give them some direction and structure in how to complete that task. Breaking tasks into manageable chunks, maybe highlighting keywords or highlighting just bits for them to do, or covering up part of the sheet so they can only see one bit at a time. And visual timetables. People with autism have a real strength when it comes to visual, so anything that can be presented visually is very useful. And visuals can be pictures, photos, written words, objects. And they can be referred back to, whereas a verbal, once you say something, you can't be referred back to it. So even in high school, if you can write instructions down on the board, it can be very useful. Talking about high school, here are some high school examples, and sorry they're a little bit blurry on the screen. We have an assessment planner in the top left, so breaking down all the different steps for an assessment, what subjects it's for, when it's due, what is the assignment about, what questions need to be answered, how many pages does it need to be, pictures, where do I hand in my assignment. So you can structure that information, and down on the right-hand bottom there's a little assessment tracker. So another characteristic of autism that can make completing work difficult is organisation. You might have work desks quite disorganised, backpacks, forgetting to bring things home, forgetting to take things into school, and trouble keeping personal space like bedrooms tidy. This could also be making sure you're taking the correct equipment to different classes, especially in high school, when you've got a lot of movement throughout the day. So are there any other examples that your child might display in this area? Okay, so some strategies can be colour coding. Could be colour coding a visual timetable for each subject, colour coding equipment to match the subject on the timetable, having an equipment list of what's needed for each subject or for each activity, limiting the use of equipment, a visual schedule, which I'll just show you now. That's the schedule for a morning routine. What needs to be done, it can be ticked off, and then there's that reinforcement at the end of once you've completed that routine. And things like this will really help with organisation, and you can have a little checklist on the school bag of what needs to go in there in the afternoon to be taken home. It can be expanded across all different areas. So just have a think about now if there's any other suggestions that work for you at home, or are you aware of some strategies that they're using at school to help with organisation? So another characteristic of autism that can make completing work difficult is memory, and especially when it comes to verbal instructions, with them not being able to refer back to them. So they might say they will do something later but forget, lose or misplace belongings, forget homework assignments or to bring home needed materials, and can be lots of different reasons why this could be difficult. It might be something that's happened in the environment that has distracted them, such as sensory sensitivities. Maybe the homework's given at the end of the day when the bell rings, and the distraction and the noise of the bell means that they can't focus on what homework they're being given. Could be their central coherence when they focus on small details and not the bigger picture. So even as adults, we have a lot of things that we use to help us with memories, like shopping lists, diaries, to-do lists, post-it notes. So think about what are some of those strategies that you use to help you with your memory, and what are some things that you might be able to use with your child. So a couple of strategies are to use a diary or a checklist. Positive reinforce, because once again, anything we reinforce, we get more of. Using the technology that's around to have a calendar on the computer, the iPod or the iPhone with reminders. The use of another visual work schedule, so visually they can see what they need to do and can help remind them what's happening throughout the day. Have a minute to think about what's working for you at home, or are you aware of any strategies that the school uses? Okay, so another characteristic is attention. So on the screen you can see 3 examples under attention. So difficulty paying attention, can be easily distracted, runs out of steam before finishing homework or other tasks, problems persisting with schoolwork. And some strategies that can help with attention. So we know that children with autism process sensory, sounds, smells, taste. If you think about your 7 senses, the way that they process that information is different, and that can have an effect on their attention. So you might be looking at the environment and looking at maybe where they're sitting at home or in the classroom to make sure they're away from any sensory inputs that might distract them, such as noise, light, movement of others. Putting in some movement breaks, especially if that's what they're seeking. And there's an example of a break pass that can be used in a classroom. And reinforcing the schedule. And another visual that just shows you can use, put an arrow that spins on it to show where do I need to focus at the moment. Take another moment to think about what's working for you at home when it comes to strategies around attention, and are you aware of any strategies that the school is currently using? So this next slide is the planning matrix, and if you've been to one of our workshops, you'll be familiar with the planning matrix. It's a tool that's really a snapshot. The tool that is used to capture a snapshot of your child. If you're not familiar with the planning matrix, there's information on our website and videos that you can watch to learn about how to use it. But it's a useful tool for identifying the impact of specific issues and developing strategies to assist. Remember that many of the strategies to support and improve behaviour skills also develop other skills. And when we're looking at the strategies, we're really looking at what is the implication for the characteristics and matching those strategies to the implication. So some suggestions for strategies could include using visual supports, areas of interest or role modelling. For example, practicing behaviours and skills with your child, so practicing sitting down and completing a task. Teaching your child specific behaviour, like using the break pass. Use social scripts to help children understand situations, explain the benefits to the child of learning this. So it might be a social script around what to do if I make a mistake or what to do if I need help. Teach explicitly the rules of different social situations. Teach what to do when things aren't going their way. You could role play with your child how to join in a game. And some children may need very structured role play scenarios to practice the skills required for social interactions with others. You could teach how to read social cues to join in a game or conversation. Some children need skills broken down into smaller steps. Use visual reminders such as cue cards to support initial learning, and give positive feedback for new and improved behaviour. So just like you to take the time to have a think now about what works for you. What strategies? Maybe it's some of the ones that we've gone through today in regards to how we can help children with autism complete work. There may be others that weren't mentioned today that you find useful, but just have a think about what's working for you and what you could share with the school. If you would like more information on completing work, then we have an online module that you can access through our website that goes into more of the theory around completing work and those characteristics of autism that may impact on completing work, and also goes over some more strategies and some of the strategies that we looked at today. It takes about 15 minutes to do the module. You complete it in your own time, and you can stop and start. You don't need a full 15 minutes to do it in one go. You can come back to it when it's convenient. Our website has a range of courses that you can do. So as well as that completing work module. There's a lot of other online modules on different topics, from making friends, understanding behaviour, the planning matrix that was looked at earlier. And you just need to register in that top right-hand corner on the website to access that online learning portal. There's a lot of other evidence-based information on the website, such as fact sheets that you also may be interested in. We also have a Facebook page if you want to stay connected to Positive Partnerships and some of the families and other people that have attended workshops. And we're also on Twitter. The Facebook page has a lot of tips and information and chats regarding the supporting of school-aged children with autism. It's a forum for people to share their experiences of autism, and we encourage you to leave comments, photos, videos and links on the page. The posts are reviewed and any that are deemed offensive or inappropriate are removed. And just before we finish, if you can just reflect on what have you learnt today in regards to completing work. You think about what are some of those characteristics that can impact on completing work. Things like executive functioning, which relates to the organisation, the planning, the sequencing, things like time management, memory. Maybe you still have some more questions and think about what those questions may be. Think about what can you do now? What's one thing or one new strategy you may have heard today that you can teach your child that will help them with completing work? And if you have any feedback, you can email us through the website or use our Facebook page. And I just want to finish on a little comic here and say thank you for joining today's webinar.